One day, when I was 12, 13 years old, I went to a book fair with my parents. Now, I'm not sure if book fairs are different around the world, but to me, they were one of the most fun times I've ever had. I was looking around, looking for books. My mom picked out a book called Calvin and Hobbes. And I was like, that looks really fun and cool. And they were comic strips. And then she put it down because it was too expensive. And she bought me a book from Winnie the Pooh instead. Hi, I'm Mark T. And I'm doing 5 days of Christmas videos. But really, they're not all going to be related to Christmas. I'm here to talk about 5 things, or really 4 things, that really mean a lot to me. And today is another episode of that show that I made quite a while ago. Although it's not characters that inspire me, it's people. And the person is Bill Watterson. So, as some of you might know, I want to be a cartoonist. It's a dream I've held on to for the past 3 years. You might have seen it in my, 2020, 2019 New Year's video. I was discussing about, all the plans I wanted to do and all the things I wanted to change about myself. But being a cartoonist is one of those things that I never gave up on. Now, you might be wondering why I'm talking about Bill Watterson when also talking about cartooning, aside from the fact that Bill Watterson is a cartoonist. And that's because Bill Watterson is my inspiration for being a cartoonist. Calvin and Hobbes is my favorite comic strip of all time. And ironically, it was through watching a documentary on Netflix, this one completely ordinary night that completely inspired me. Unfortunately, I can't remember the name of the documentary. I believe it was called Finding Bill Watterson. And even only watching 20 minutes of it completely had me enthralled. Just a story about a man that made something that makes everybody that reads it, or at least almost everybody that reads it, so happy. It just inspired me. Now, before that point, I was kind of listless. I had failed out of college. I was working what seemed like a dead-end job. It was not a particularly pleasant moment in my life. But that kind of brought something out from inside of me. So, let's start talking about it. Now, I'm going to be honest, I don't know a whole lot about Bill Watterson. So it kind of seems weird that I'm doing an inspired by. Really, mostly what I know is his media, aka Calvin and Hobbes, and everything else. Well, not everything else. In reality, he's worked on Calvin and Hobbes. He was inspired by Charles Schulz, who, if you're unfamiliar, was the creator of Charlie Brown and the Peanuts. And he decided that after his work was done on Calvin and Hobbes that he didn't want to essentially sell out. He made his books, he made his money, and he left. That was all I know about it. But I think that's enough to know why I think he's such a great person and why he is my inspiration for wanting to be a cartoonist. But let's move on to more of a personal story. So, after seeing that documentary, I went to an Indigo, or a Chapters. It depends on what they call it in your country, but for me it was Chapters, and then it became Indigo. And I found this book, Calvin and Hobbes. I read through it. I was enthralled with the wild adventures of a child and what seemed like a make-believe tiger just going on adventures, meeting new friends, driving his parents crazy. It was incredible. And I realized why people around the world completely loved this comic book, this comic strip. And I love it too. And that's how I got into it. I now currently own the entire collection. If you see any of those like hardcover, not hardcover, like the hard box that holds 4 books in it that cover the entire run of Calvin and Hobbes. I actually haven't finished Calvin and Hobbes, surprisingly, despite the fact that Bill Watterson is my favorite cartoonist. But yeah, now you might be wondering what I'm talking about. It's just it's all known knowledge aside from my own personal experiences. And you're right. Like I said, I don't know a lot about Bill Watterson, other than he inspired me. He made my favorite comic strip. But the funny thing is, in 2023, he made something new. Something I was never expecting. One day I got a call from my best friend, and he told me Bill Watterson came out with something new, knowing that I was obviously a very big fan at the time. And a couple of days later, I picked up this. The Mysteries by Bill Watterson and John Cashett. I'm sorry if I said that incorrectly. This was something new after years of being out of the spotlight, and I've read it in one night. It's not very long. It's a picture book. I don't want to ruin any of it for you. It was really, really good. And if you haven't read it yet, I suggest you pick it up. I know this might not be as in-depth as other things I've discussed that inspire me, like Doctor Who, but it's just, I really had to say, I respect Bill Watterson. I would love to meet him in real life, but I seriously doubt that's ever going to happen. And that if this video, as short as it is, has inspired you, I suggest you go check it out. Thank you. And I'll see you tomorrow.